Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly episode of the Manchester United podcast. I'm the host, as always, Phil Brown, joined with the legend of Martin Wallwork, who finally I could afford his appearance fee. On this special bonus podcast, we've been waiting for a while for United to win a game of football to actually record one. How you doing, mate?
All right, mate. How are you?
All right.
Feels a little bit better after yesterday. So,
Yeah,
but it's the hope that kills you, isn't it?
yeah, I know it's we've been asking all season, is this a turning point? But I highly doubt this is. But nonetheless, on the positive, how did you feel about last night?
Mixed feelings, to be honest with you. It's like you said, we've been waiting. And there's been a few occasions where you've seen a little spark and seen something. Um, it's easy to get carried away in the moment. Yeah, it was a decent performance, decent energy. But when you're comparing it to what we've seen, you got to kind of temper your expectations, I suppose. But I mean, some exciting prospects there. We know with Ahmad looking like, you know, makes you wonder why he's not featured more.
Mm,
Amrabat, whilst I think people have gone overboard saying it was a great performance, that was a good performance, but still a performance that makes you wonder why he's not appeared more. Um, Garnacho looks very tired to
yeah,
me.
it
Played
is.
too much football, obviously. Um, but the one difference in this last couple of games, Bruno looked energised, which again makes you wonder why he's not been given a break. I know it's been tough because who do you bring in? But parts of this season, does it matter who you would have brought in? Could it have been any worse at times? Was it a fluke? But as a singular performance, it was nothing more out than I would expect on your last home game of the season when you owe your fans a little bit of something.
Yeah, they definitely did that. They definitely owed United fans something. And it does raise fair questions about Ahmad. Why wasn't Ahmad playing earlier? There's two ways of looking at that. You could say that, look, Ten Hag's the one that's given him the chances to play. But when you look, and I don't like doing this, I don't like using someone else's, downfall to contrast with someone else's, positive form. Like, in other words, let's use Ahmad's great form to criticize Anthony. I don't like doing that. But the contrast between the two is massive.
It's huge. It's it, this is the confusion, and and obviously we'll get onto this, but the Ten Hag in, Ten Hag out, and I don't think it's as black and white as people can make it, because I think there's two cases you're looking at. I think you've got to look at it from a club scenario where we can't keep going through that same cycle of sacking managers. But as you know, as a coach myself, I'm a highly licensed coach, and so I like to think that I do see things a little different at times. I'm just not patting myself on the back, but I try to look at the game a little bit differently and take myself out of the fan aspect when I can. And I've needed to see something to give me belief and to give me um, something to justify keeping Ten Hag in the job. So I think there's two different scenarios, and I fully agree with both. So that's what's made it really, really difficult. But with the Anthony thing and Ahmad, they're also two different type of players, and he's deployed them in two different systems. Yesterday, I mean, the game against Arsenal was a little bit different. I think that was blown out of proportion. I don't think Arsenal got out of second gear. I don't think they really, really pushed United. I think they did what they needed to do. United never looked like scoring. Yesterday was a little bit more open. I think there was a little bit more at stake for both teams in the game. And Ten Hag, for the first real time, deployed a completely different system that definitely suited, if nothing else, the personnel that we had available. A little bit more structure in midfield, almost a box. It was almost a 4-2-2-2 with a box midfield, kind of split strikers, and which really allowed Ahmad to thrive, because Ahmad can go inside, he can go outside. Um, different types of player, but Ahmad's more in the, again, not bashing Anthony, but Ahmad's more in the role of what you would want from a United quote unquote winger, because traditional wingers I don't think exist anymore. And I think people have to understand how many genuine wingers are out there now in a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2 that are flying wingers who beat the man down the outside and pull ball back in the box. This inverted wingers are kind of the rave right now. So Yeah, I'm at more in the realm of what we would like to be seeing United, what we're used to seeing with this the winger that gets you off your feet and you know makes you believe something's going to happen.
I think the way United play, they need to have players like this because they don't
Hmm.
cut you open through their patterns of play. So they need individual players that are going to run at you, they're going to make something happen, put defenders on the back foot. What I thought was interesting was, the Kobe Manu goal, Ahmad comes from, is on the right, comes in from the left. Usually when Anthony does that, he'll shoot as soon as he cuts inside, and that ball ends up at Kobe Manu's feet. I I might probably could have had a penalty at the weekend. If the Newcastle one's a penalty, then Ahmad's is a penalty against Arsenal.
Well,
Um,
I'll say from what's given us penalties these days, probably was a penalty,
okay, so yeah,
but still
could
soft.
have
But
been
yeah,
given this, but we saw Garnacho, get denied what, two of those against Burnley. And so to me, the way he has a few more dimensions to his game. He's very, very good. He technically his quick feet, his balance. I mean, the goal that he scored was fantastic. The way he took it was exceptional. And to me, I think when I look at Anthony, I don't want to criticize him because I don't see there's any value in that. Um, it it would be hard for me to think, hey, any way he could play better than what we've seen from Ahmad. Or he should be in the team. I haven't seen Anthony play the way Ahmad played last night for quite a while. Maybe the last time we saw him play like that was against Barcelona at Old Trafford, or one or two matches, if even that. Um, the contrast was massive, and I thought it added a whole different dimension to United's attack and play. Also, what I would say, Martin, is when we're talking about Ten Hag, two of the three goal scorers last night were out for half the season, pre-season injuries. You know, those would have been we talk about transformative players being injured that have greatly affected the way Ten Hag has been able to play. One of the other players who played last night, Lissandro Martinez, of course, huge loss, transformative. I think that in that sense, he's been really, really unlucky, and I think Ahmad would have played an awful lot more, obviously, had he been fit the first half of the season. And he anytime we've seen him this season, he's been excellent.
yeah. We're assuming he would have played more. Again, I don't see an awful lot of evidence to suggest that that would be true. I mean, with Asando, with Licha, I mean, obviously a massive loss. And this is where I was talking about the two different cases. I mean, the two different sides of the coin with the Ten Hag argument is I can I can forgive the injuries. I can forgive the lack of rotation for the but why wasn't there a change of structure far earlier on in the season to protect that back four, to shore up that midfield, to stick the extra man in midfield, to stop it being so blatantly, obviously wide open? That's what I can't, as the coaching side of me, that's what I can't understand, and that's what I would
Well,
like. And I
let me
think
ask.
Ineos have got a fair point to ask him these questions before they, if, presuming they've not come to their decision, or I would hope that they have come to their decision. If they're waiting for an FA Cup final, one game to 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 decide his fate, then I'd be more concerned in that realm. They should know whether they're going to back him or they're going to get rid of him, and that should be known right now. But so you'll forgive me. I know someone gave me stick on here for the noise, and of course the garbage truck shows up. So there's some questions I think need answering. I think I deserve questions. I get the. I mean, it's not just the amount of injuries, but where the injuries have taken place. It's also had a knock-on effect. I look at Kobe Mainu. I mean, what a wonderful, wonderful talent. And I think the last couple of games, he's just started to show it again. I think his body was in danger of really being affected. But he has played far too much football for his age this year. Um, so that they're the areas that I do have the sympathy. The areas that I don't have the sympathy is how much have I seen to suggest that things would have been different, that better players would have filled those gaps, better players would have done things differently. Would better players have closed the gaps in that midfield? Would better players have made us structurally more sound through the middle of the pitch? How much would Wan-Bissaka have featured? Possibly, not the most intelligent footballer in the world, shall we say. The same goals are getting conceded week in, week out. That question I would pose: why? I don't care. You've got a squad of 25, 30 players on a training pitch, Monday through Friday, all supposedly going through the same routines, the same philosophy, the same setup, the same ideas, the same plans. Better players should be able to produce that and execute that on a higher level. Lower level players should still be able to execute that on a worse level. We're not. The evidence to me hasn't been that we have seen the same philosophy at different levels. The same gaps, the same things are appearing no matter who is placed out there. So that's the coaching side of me. That's the concern for me.
All right.
On the
other
side of it.
Sorry, go ahead, man. Go ahead, man.
On the other side of it, you can't keep it. I fail to believe that Ten Hag is a poor manager. He's likable, and like a half tongue in cheek yesterday when I text you. That's what I want him wearing. He looked like a Manchester United manager yesterday, in the club suit with the club crest on. It might be trivial, but I remember that was the first thing that Ollie did when he came back into the club. Do you remember that? He had all them players showing up for the matches again in their club suits. Get rid of the track suits, get rid of the speakers with our headphones on one ear and rolled up pants. That discipline and the structure brought back into the club, and I think it has a big effect. And he's been battered from pillar to post by mainstream media about his suits and how he dresses and stuff like that.
I think that's a disgrace, by the way, personally.
I do too. I do too. But I thought he looked like a Manchester United manager yesterday.
But me, to police the guy's clothes. I mean, you can have a preference for what he wears, but for the media to pick on his clothes, imagine.
Oh, well, they bat him for everything. He's English. It's part and parcel.
What if it was Emma Hayes we were doing this with, and we were talking about Emma Hayes, the way she dresses? She doesn't dress.
Well, I think you're already in trouble for mentioning her name.
What's that?
I said I think you're already in trouble for mentioning her name.
But this is what I mean. I mean, this is not okay. This happened from day one when Ten Hag came in. You had journalists that were picking on the way he dressed, the way he spoke, his accent, his English language, his personality. These are things that if you did this to a female manager, you would be sacked on the spot. Mm-hmm. So why can't we have the same sensitivity? Why is he being policed on things that have nothing to do with it? I can.
He's a Manchester United manager. Whatever they can use to beat him with.
Yes, so this is this Jason McAteer, fucking idiot, right? Making up stories in his head. He bumped in.
What the fuck? They ran into somebody. He ran into a player.
Yeah, I mean,
into a player.
Yeah, usually go out on a Friday and you'll bump into them. That tends to happen on a Friday night. But this to me, like, if you look at the way Ten Hag is set up, Liverpool away, got to draw no each pragmatic. City away, they were 1-1 with City with 10 minutes to go. Kyle Walker probably should have been sent off in that game, and Garnacho very easily could have had a penalty. They were 1-1 with Arsenal until about 6 minutes into injury time, and Garnacho should have arguably could have had a goal, and Hoyland should have had a penalty. Arsenal at home, they lose based on one mistake out of Casemiro. They beat Liverpool at home, right? City, they get a penalty given against them with Paul Tierney. It's never been given again, right? With Rasmus Hoyland, grabbing Rodri. It's happened a million times. So he clearly knows how to set up a team. He beat City at home last season, right? Beat Liverpool at home last season, beat Arsenal at home last season. United had the best defensive home record in the league last season. They had the third best defensive record in the league overall last season, joint with Arsenal. So he clearly knows how to set up a football team. You don't work at Ajax, you don't work at Bayern Munich under Pep and not know how to set up a football team. If you look at the games that United have been wide open in, they're games they should be attacking. They shouldn't be sitting back. They shouldn't be sitting back at home to Burnley, right? They shouldn't be sitting back against Forest at home. They shouldn't be sitting back against Galatasaray. They shouldn't be sitting back against these teams. They should be going for them. Now, when you're playing against better opposition with better players, then, I can totally understand playing defensive. With Amrabat's decent defensively, But there's a couple of things. Go back to the League Cup game against Newcastle, because I immediately had visions of that game when Amrabat gets dispossessed in midfield. That was the game United lost 3-0, I believe it was. Gets dispossessed in midfield, Newcastle go through and score. He did that last night. He did that on Sunday against Arsenal, Sunday. He isn't good enough in possession. His passing's not great. He's decent defensively. He bailed Wan-Bissaka out. And by the way, one of one of the things I want you to watch in that clip is the pace of which Wan-Bissaka ran back. Zero intensity, jogged back. In fact, there was players that started behind him from Newcastle that finished up ahead of him. With him, Amrabat made the tackle. And that would infuriate me if I'm Ten Hag, because you gave the ball away. At least make the effort to get back. These are the little things when you talk about setup, when you're talking about tactics. You have to actually want the ball. You have to put pressure on the ball when you get attacked. Very rarely did I see United do that. They back off, 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 and then they let you shoot. So how many times we see it the weekend against Arsenal, right? Where they back off, they let them shoot. And as you saw it against Liverpool, Harvey Elliott, edge of box bang, McAllister, same thing. They don't pressure the ball. That would frustrate me. So I think that having no left back, 6 injured centre backs, having to play a right back and left back who probably isn't good enough at this level in his best position, having to play a guy who's a defensive midfielder at centre back who has no pace, right? These things matter at this level. You're in outside of 5 or 6 players, United squad is an average Premier League squad. I mean, honestly, that's what it is. If outside of 5 or 6 players, if those players are on the market, that's who's coming in for those players. Average Premier League club or bottom half Premier League club. Nobody in the top half. Okay, so I think that there's plenty of reasons you can criticize Ten Hag. I agree, and I agree that there's a lot of persistent issues that should be addressed. What concerns me how bad United are defending set pieces, especially corners. Right? I mean, I was at the Arsenal game. Every single corner they got the first header. Every single one. Last night, same thing. They look so vulnerable on set pieces. That shouldn't be complicated to fix on a changing, or on a training ground. You should be able to organize. Manu's marking down at the back post. I'm like, what are you doing? There was a chance that I think it was Isak had that he was absolutely, Bruno Guimaraes, can't remember, wide open for a header. And it was from a corner, and it was blatantly obvious before they took it that he was wide open and he was central. I'm like, how does this happen? I mean, that is unacceptable to me. But the other thing is with the injuries. I was listening to Talk of the Devils this morning, Martin, and Andy Mitten was talking about the Wayne Rooney comment about players who could play that are protecting themselves. And Andy said that came from the fact that it was exceptionally well sourced. So if you have players that are choosing not to play, then to me, I think that the problems are much, much deeper than the system your manager is picking.
Yeah, but I would my counter, and again, would be then let's hope that these players aren't reintroduced then at weekend of the cup final, because if they are, if all these players all of a sudden, whoever these players are in question, I won't, I can all probably imagine who he's talking about, but if these
I don't know exactly who he's talking about, because that's, I agree. I think so too, but I think Rooney should have been a bit more precise on that, because then it's unfair to the players.
Yeah, but I think, I think we'd all have liked him to be a bit more precise. But I think there was something about Rooney's body language there, and the way he said it, and the way he kind of leaned back afterwards, told me immediately that wasn't a throwaway comment. I had a strong suspicion that he knew exactly, that was coming from a good source. But again, so now we will see if any of these players in question, if any players who we've not seen for a while, all of a sudden appear. Then then my question would be, why? So then that is on the manager. for allowing them to be reintroduced. If there's a question mark of that, then off you go.
I
But
suppose it's hard to
I
prove,
mean,
man.
Leach, I mean, he was knocking down the door to play last week. So there's the other side of it, right? Leach wanted to play against Arsenal, and Ten Hag's like, no, we're saving you.
I suppose it's
So,
hard to prove in it because
oh,
you know
it's
if someone tells you they're not fit, they're feeling pain. You can't say they're not. You know, but
yeah.
interesting to know where Rooney got that from. Where someone has confidence.
It's usually players are the ones who know that. Players are the ones who know.
Yeah, I'd just be curious how, if a player is doing that, who they would tell that they're actually fit, but they're choosing not to play. This happens all the time in football clubs. You know,
100%.
Martial, choose not to play. With Ralph Rangnick. I mean, players do this. Paul Scholes
Well,
choose not to play for the reserves.
and rightly or wrongly, and it is wrong. I'll take that back. Wrongly, you've also got a Euros. What's the motivation for some of these guys? I mean, there should be enough motivation. Don't get me wrong.
Well, how many of them are guaranteed to go to the Euros?
In their head, probably all of them.
I
In
mean,
their
if
mind,
I was maybe Bruno Fernandes. How many players would say that are
I
guaranteed?
think Rashford's got a fight in his hands. I think Rashford needs to get back in. I mean, with the squads, the squads are expanded, weren't they, to 26, 27 Euro squads. So I think that ultimately may save Rashford.
Yeah, but you only want to go to that tournament if you're going to play. Otherwise, why wouldn't you just want to take the summer off? Like, what would be the point? If I'm Marcus Rashford,
I think that's a
not going
different.
to be in
I think
that
that's a
squad.
different argument. I think that's a different argument again, though.
These are players that need a break. I mean, going and sitting on the bench and being, you're the 26th man. It's fine
I
if
think
you're.
that's why you've got to you've got to give Ben White credit. He was absolutely hammered, but I think that's the point. That's the point you're making there. Ben White didn't want to stick around there and be a spare part. Like, if you're not going to play me, I'll take the time off.
Yeah, I mean, on Marcus Rashford, once again in the warm up, he's facing
Disgusting.
abuse, and honestly, I don't understand how anyone calling themselves a Manchester United fan walk into a stadium and level abuse at a player warming up.
Warming up.
And how do you think that helps the player? How do you think that makes that human? I mean, I understand that criticism comes with territory in this game. We all do, right? That's fine. But people have to understand that these are human beings that are on the receiving end of this. And I've never known sustained abuse to bring the best out of anyone ever. What else do you need to say to Marcus Rashford that hasn't already been said? You think that he isn't aware that his form isn't, great? You think that he isn't aware that of how people feel? There's a perception that he doesn't care, which of course is total nonsense, right? And I don't know. We got to this point with Maguire, Martin, where there was a threshold between venting your criticism and it going too far, and you start to become concerned about the human being on the receiving end. Over it's like, look, this is football. As much as I get frustrated about football, do I really want a human being to be sitting at home? And I'm not saying this is Marcus, but I'm saying that imagine how it must feel to have to deal with this day in, day out. Imagine how it must feel if you're part of that person's family. I mean, it must be hell on earth. I can't even imagine that being my kid.
Well, it's not even like you're getting it from opposition fans. These are supposed to be your own fans. Oh, and by the way, certain top red YouTube accounts who hammer him, who hammer Maguire, who hammer Scott McTominay. Players who, by the way, Maguire and McTominay, who show up week in, week out. Are they Scott McTominay, his first name on a team sheet for his national team. People, the level of, and I don't care, it's not abuse. The constant ridicule is abuse to me. Just the constant ridicule. It really does wind me up. I see players there who care about the club. I see players who, again, they show up. How often? Up until this season, I know Maguire's had a couple of injuries this season. How often does Maguire miss a game? in his United career. He
Yeah.
showed up. What? But all of a sudden, because he can't play a high line, who gives a fuck?
Well, he was.
You know what? Then tactically set up differently. You don't have to have a squad. You don't have to have a squad of players who are copy and paste. You have to have players in your squad who have the ability to play in different systems. But this whole all of a sudden where if a player's got a shortcoming, lacks a bit of pace, he's absolutely ridiculed. If a player isn't again Lionel Messi in the centre midfield or up top, he's a crap footballer. The guy
Yeah.
can't pass the ball like Scholes.
He doesn't
He's
matter in
shit.
football, man.
It's you know,
I mean,
Rashford. I don't know how this whole he needs to try Marcus. He needs to try harder. What would you do? Being having that abuse barreled at you while you're warming up in a match that you're not even starting. Where does his motivation continually come from? To pull that out of himself to bust his ass. I feel sorry for the guy. I think it's absolutely outrageous.
well,
And you know, to have him thrown at him that he doesn't care is an absolute disgrace because we 100% know how much he cares about this
yeah,
football
he
club.
cares.
He's United through and through.
But this is something that would be a warning for Jim Ratcliffe. Okay, and here's the thing about Ratcliffe, mate. I was thinking about this. Um, Ineos's ownership. The clock starts ticking on their ownership May 25th. The minute the cup final stops. Everything after that, they own. Everything they break is theirs. Everything they don't fix is theirs. The anonymity that Jim Ratcliffe had is gone. The anonymity that Don Ashworth had is gone. The anonymity that Omar Barada had is gone. Jason Wilcox is gone, right? And they're going to be thrust into a world that they've never set foot in. Same with Brailsford, everything else. And if they don't get this right, the criticism that will come their way will be unlike anything they've ever felt.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a new world for them. And I just wonder, if it goes wrong, 2 years in, criticisms of, you can just imagine where it's going to be. Ratcliffe goes, I don't have the appetite for a full buyout because this wasn't what I thought. And it's very easy right now to sell yourself as the local hero and coming and making all these simple decisions. But the big ones are the ones that need to be made next. So, and I really, really hope it works. I'm more optimistic today than any other time we've been in the last 10 years. I can't imagine where United would be if Ineos had not have come in.
What you mean if Qatar would have come in, they wouldn't be better?
Well, I mean, just if we still had the Glazers, where would the United would be looking at financial Armageddon? I mean, it really is that bad. But I look at Ratcliffe and Bruno Fernandez's statement about United matching his ambition. This is a big issue because you can see there's players on that pitch that don't feel that United match their ambition. And for Ineos to be successful, they can't lose the club's best player. Forget about attracting players. If you can't convince the players you have at the club to stay, that's a major poke in the eye for not exactly an endorsement of your ownership. United without Bruno Fernandes to me is unthinkable. And I can understand people saying, 4 years from now, yeah, but we need to worry about right now. 4 years from now, if United are winning league titles and they're making millions, then let Bruno Fernandes go. But right now, they need to win. Real Madrid can let a player like Bruno Fernandes go because they have world-class players to replace him. United don't, right? I mean, so for me, with Ineos, they cannot afford to lose players like that. Rafael Varane goes, okay, now it's about who you replace him with. Not many people would argue about you letting him go. Not many people would argue about letting Martial go, but you're going to get judged on their replacements. And that is something Ineos are going to have to buy big, in my opinion. You cannot replace Anthony Martial with Joselu from Real Madrid at 34. Then you cannot replace Rafael Varane with Tosin from Fulham, who, by the way, if you listen to Fulham fans, they don't exactly rate him very highly.
No.
So, that's that money ball strategy. I really hope Ineos don't try to employ. And when I see them being linked with people like Thomas Frank and Graham Potter, I ask myself, is it Brighton you want to become? Is it Brentford you want to become? Is it a club that develops young players, that sells them, and brings in, one or two veteran players? That's fine, because if Carlo Ancelotti was walking away from Real Madrid, they're not going for Thomas Frank and they're not going for Graham Potter. And if you're going for managers like that, you're going for players that those managers manage.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's going to be real interesting over the summer now. And I think, and while you were discussing that, I think the one thing I missed on Ten Hag was one thing that has remained constant, as you know, with me. I think he deserves time, at least the foreseeable future, whether that's 6 months a year. I think he deserves a little bit of time under a proper footballing structure. I don't think, whilst again, my earlier comments may sound like I was leaning Ten Hag out. I was just trying to see both sides of the
Yes,
argument
no, I, I agree with
from a
you. I have
fan
to
side and from
agree.
a coaching side myself. I still believe, maybe wrong, and you and I talk. We it's hard not to go back and forth
Yeah, no,
because
that's
the level
exactly what
is
I
so
do every
low.
day.
But I think ultimately, I think if I'm being honest with myself, I think he deserves time with this structure to kind of put to bed. All right, now this is believing, and this is counting on that structure now being what it has been put in place to do, and not becoming a Brighton, a Brentford. So it's a huge summer for Ineos. It's a huge summer for the individuals you spoke about there. How much are they going to be handcuffed by financial fair play? How much are they going to have to prioritize? Well, they're going to have to prioritize positionally where they want to go, but there's a lot of work going to go in. I mean, we're going to see some we're going to have to see some free agents come in to satisfy for their financial fair play. I would imagine, to put the players in the right positions to plug the other gaps. The problem we've seen year after year for 15 years or so is we seem to go the third of the way every summer. And by the time that next transfer window comes around, there's another group of players who need to be let go. So for me, Ineos have to somehow work within the constraints of financial fair play. They're going to have to raise some money. I hope that raising money isn't by getting rid of the likes of Scott McTominay. I really don't. I think Scott McTominay, whilst you know you're not going to reach the pinnacle. You're not going to get where you want to go if you're planning your future around Scott McTominay being a mainstay in that starting lineup. But what we've seen is we're talking about building a squad capable of challenging on several fronts and going deep in several fronts, both for the fan perspective and financially, because as we know with this Adidas deal, financially it's going to be absolutely crippling if we're not back in this Champions League pretty quickly. So I think it's going to be a really tough summer for them. I think strategically, um, they're going to have to nail this. They really are going to have to nail this. Do they want to do that under a new manager? If that manager that comes in, would that suggest to you that maybe that's why the likes of Gareth Southgate, who they know I have a long history with, a Graham Potter, who they have liked in the past, who they have a relationship with, who they know will steady the ship whilst they're going through this transition. Maybe that's why those type of names are being brought up, rightly or wrongly. Um, there's so much that has to happen. That's where I have my sympathy for Ten Hag. That's where it's wash, rinse, repeat, isn't it? It has been for a while. So there's just so many areas that need addressing. There's so many players that they have got to get shut off. I mean, you can get up to 7, 8, 9 players before you even get to players that are representing the club right now.
In your
Brandon Williams, Martial,
Yeah.
Sancho, Greenwood, Van der Beek. So there's five. Varane's already gone. Johnny Evans retiring. Not so. So you're at, let's take Johnny Evans out because he's been actually appearing. Varane, we know he's on. So you're at six. You're at six first team players on the books. Martial. Before you even get to players who are actually playing in the squad, then you've got the Ericssons. Then you've got the centre back. Decision to make. Then you've got I don't see how you keep Wan-Bissaka. I mean, Wan-Bissaka is somebody there where you talk about maybe raising a few funds. Maybe there's where you get, I don't know how much you get, 20 million, 15, 20 million, depending on how long is left on the contract. There's just so many.
Yeah, but see, this is what I'm saying. You're talking about 15, 20 million pound footballers that are starting in United's defence.
Exactly my point. And these are players that you've got to get out of the club. But you can't get rid of them all at once. That's what I'm saying. People are going, get rid of McTominay, get rid of Maguire. And replace them with who? Because you already have to get rid of 7 or 8 others before you even get to that like of player. So now you're talking about getting rid of 10, 12 players from a squad that's already too light and devoid of quality. So, which leads me on to this fucking asinine comments that I hear that drive me crazy as a coach. Throw the kids in. Put the kids in. Let the kids play. Put the kids play. They'll show more passion. No. Keep the fucking kids out of there. Don't damage them with this shit. Sorry. Because you've had to be on the end of my rants before on the phone. I can't stand it. I think it's the most juvenile comment and the most easiest throwaway comment. Let the kids play. The kids should be playing. What? So you put them in front of all these arsehole medias who are just going to hammer them down before their careers even got gone. Kobbie Mainoo has played too much football. Garnacho has played too much football. Rasmus Højlund has played too much football. Ahmad probably would have played too much football and even fit at the start of the season. And these are 4 players that we want to build Manchester United's future around. And I saw for a while there, Kobbie Mainoo. I saw for a while there that Kobbie Mainoo was losing faith. He got what was the comment they used in the press that he started to show he started being given the Casemiro treatment where he's jogging around. Bollocks. The kid's played too much football and he's got nothing around him and he's doing all the work.
But this is why
mentally, he's in such danger of damaging these kids before they've even had a chance to get going. That's why Ferguson was so protective of Giggs when he came through, so protective of the class of 92 when he came through. He brought them through into a team full of experience and fantastic structure and culture within the club where they're going to be taken care of by the players on the pitch. Who would take care of these kids right now if you brought them through? Apart from Bruno and Maguire, by the way, I have no confidence that any of those senior players are looking after the younger players.
This is exactly why you don't. You take a look at Garnacho's criticism after Arsenal at the weekend. I mean, this defies belief to me. I mean, Garnacho is such an obviously exceptional young player. Did you see Saka at the weekend? Wasn't great, right? Because he has nothing like normal human beings who have ups and downs, especially when
he's young.
Player. Exactly.
He's young. He's a footballer. They pinned their future on him. And they're rolling him out there. He's missing a game. And he gets,
He's a kid.
Sorry.
No, I'm just saying, he's a kid, right? So, and thank God we have him. Because I can't imagine United without. When I think about the Aston Villa game at home, how important Garnacho was to turning that around. The Everton overhead kick away, Galatasaray away. I can think of so many times this season where Garnacho has been exceptional. I mean, I feel that he should, like I said, he should have had a penalty against Man City. I feel that he was unlucky not to score the winner away to Arsenal. But he's a kid. He's 19. And
they're going to play in moments, aren't they? They're going to play in moments.
36 games in a row. He started. Last time he didn't start a game was in October. This is miles ahead of Ronaldo or anyone else at that age in terms of the games they started. And he is one of the few players at United this season that big clubs would fall over themselves to try to sign. Magnificent young player. Thank God we have him. Look, Kobbie Mainoo, I don't think people appreciate and understand how difficult it is to play week in, week out in the Premier League in central midfield. It's physically exhausting, especially when you're a young kid. And when you're a young kid like that, a teenager, your body's still growing. Well, Scott McTominay go from 5'8" to 6'4" at 18,
In a
19.
summer.
Right?
In a summer.
Yeah, and so your body's still growing. So the load on your body, on your muscles, everything makes you really vulnerable to injury. And still, despite the fact that United have not been playing well, confidence was low, that kid still is velvet. I mean, his finish yesterday didn't panic, controlled bump,
Yeah.
passed into the bottom corner. Just pure class. You can't coach that composure. Magnificent talent. Um, I wish he had been available from the start of the season. Same, like I said, same with Ahmad. Same, there's no question had United have not had injuries to Luke Shaw, to Lissandro Martinez, they would not be in this position. Because that's just
Oh, I agreed.
I think you'd have seen a much better Marcus Rashford, everything. So the key players that United lost were transformative. You look at Newcastle. Newcastle were similar to United last season, that they finished more or less same place, right? They got injuries. They're in pretty much the same place United are, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't have the squad to be able to deal with that level of injuries. They've brought in young players, Lucas Miley, they've brought in Murphy, all that, and they've been decent young players. But to the teams that are staying at the top of that level, I mean, you look at the way Arsenal bought this summer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Arteta was allowed to really build on his success. City have been able to do this for years. Outside of that, Liverpool falling away, I would imagine they'll find it difficult next season. And I think that top four place is there, but um, you know, for any us, mate, they shouldn't be treated any differently than any other owners. And how they recruit this summer, they're under enormous pressure to make sure it looks nothing like the previous years.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? And I think that's why it's very easy to say, "Oh, well, you need to go out and buy this." There's just so many more factors go into it than, "Oh, let's just go." Financial fair play. The contract. I hear people complaining about, "Oh, well, they're just getting rid of the easy ones to dump them off their wage bill." Well, yeah, because they also want to reset that culture of giving ridiculous wages to aging players. So they're also trying to reset that culture and that structure around the wage structure, so we don't get saddled with these ridiculous players who we then can't move on, because who's going to pick up their wages? So they got a huge job on the hand, mate. They've got a huge job on the hand, and to think, if there's anybody out there who thinks this is going to look a million times different next season, I think you're sadly mistaken. I think that there's time going to need to be given there, and what they do with the manager. Again, I don't see how they change manager. I don't see how you can begin it. And if you are talking about Southgate, who's tied up with England, who's making all the transfer decisions, it's like I say.
Well, I
I
mean, you can
ultimately,
say
I
that.
hope they stick with Ten Hag. I hope they give him a chance to succeed through that, with better guidance and more structure around the transfer policy. Because whilst, yes, Ten Hag didn't pay 80 or 90 million for Anthony, Anthony's still his player. It's still the player that he wanted. So
Mhm.
he has to answer for, is what he is doing, is that how you want to play?
Well, he
With
didn't sign him, but he didn't say no.
inverted Go with inverted wingers. His system has clearly been to play with inverted wingers, which leads me to, okay, then why did you want Hoyland? If I'm Rasmus Hoyland,
Which
who said,
yes, no,
I'm knocking on the door going, why did you sign me? What is my role in this team here? Because
I
for
would
a
say
large
Holland
part of the
played
season,
better,
we
but
have seen everybody taking up the same position in the centre of
yes,
that centre back, in
100%.
a false nine, if you want to call it. It's congested in there. So saying, "Oh, we want to go buy creative wingers," it's okay wanting to go and buy creative wingers if the manager is not going to let you be creative. If you buy a player based on his profile of player, as a flying winger, and then put him in a system where you want him to be an inverted winger, then it doesn't matter. You've got to buy players for your system. That's why so many players these days, and I keep on about, are system players. They can play in a specific system. Take them out of that specific system, they look completely different.
Yeah, see, this is how if you look at Ajax have a consistent system all the way throughout from, under six all the way up.
Mm.
And then people like Danny Van de Beek step into that system and they look fantastic because they have limited roles and you can look
Yes.
very, very good in a system that's set up to your strengths, how you've been developed to fit exactly into that system. But then you take them out of that and you put them in other systems, then they're not as flexible. Then they can't play that way. Then they look like what happened to the player that was, we saw here. I mean, Ferguson was quite good at this about getting the best out of average players in a system. I mean, I look at some of the teams that Ferguson picked to beat, Arsenal and stuff and beat. I mean, you look at the lineups and you're going, how did he find a way to win with this team? I mean, you look at United's last season in the Premier League. That was not a good squad. I mean, it's some good players in there. Obviously they'd still got Rooney and Van Persie and everything, but you look at his midfield. I mean, it was anything but top class, and they hadn't bought a midfielder for like 5 years since I think Anderson might have been the last one that they bought. And so this is when you can get a system that brings the best out of everyone. But I think it takes time to get there. I think it's very difficult to do that when you have players that they don't know how to play that way, where you're sort of playing a hybrid. I mean, Ten Hag said, I can't play the way I play at Ajax because I don't have the players here. And I think that it's very difficult for United to find any rhythm in a system when, one, you have players that aren't capable of playing it, and two, they're almost never fit. I mean, you look at what's going on behind the scenes with the medical department. They're understaffed, so they have to focus on short-term injuries. They don't have the staff for the oversight on long-term rehab, so they're constantly having setbacks. This doesn't just mean you have a setback in your rehab. This affects your ability as a footballer. This affects when you finally get back on the pitch, how vulnerable you are to injury again. How much you lose during that period. I mean, these are not inconsequential things. These are big things United have to fix. I mean, if you read Dan Sheldon's piece on Terrell Malacia and what United did with Terrell Malacia, it actually is infuriating that a football club at this size is allowed to operate like that. And it would really concern me if I was an injured player at United about how much I would trust their medical department and my convalescence, because the Luke Shaw situation is a disgrace. I mean, United told Ten Hag in January to let Reguilon go
Yeah.
because Malacia and Shaw were ready to play. Neither of, I think Shaw's played 3 games since then. But anyway, all right, let's take a quick look at this weekend. Brighton, you had a good record here, but they lost to a resurgent Chelsea. And then, of course, cup final. What do you expect this weekend?
Well, I think what I expect is more. There'll be a little bit of rotation. I think there'll be, obviously, I think he'll get Rashford in there maybe from the start. He'll get Martinez in there from the start, or at least give him put some minutes in the legs for those players. Bruno will start. I'd be interested to see what he does with Rasmus, because now you've maybe inadvertently caused yourself a little bit of a problem now after looking so good in that different system. You almost want to go, let's take a look at that, because you are going to have to be compact in the midfield. I think he's going to have to use this game against Brighton to make his own mind up how he's going to set up in the cup final. I think it'll be managing minutes. I think it'll be. I mean, I would quite honestly, I wouldn't play Mania. I really wouldn't.
I think it's a game you need to win, Martin. First of all, they
Well, what they always tell.
They don't win it.
What they always tell you, winning's a habit and losing's a habit. So you don't want to. When I say don't play Menu, it's not because I say it's a throwaway game. It's,
I know what you mean.
I want to make sure United have every ounce of a chance, as far fetched as that might be, to win that cup final.
Let me ask
And
you this.
whatever. So maybe you start him and you get him off his feet regardless after 60 minutes. I don't know, but there's going to have to be some managing of minutes in that game because ultimately, what I would be looking for, yes, a win would be great, but I think a really good. I want to see us build off the last couple of performances, whilst the pragmatic approach against Arsenal, whilst we didn't create anything, we at least looked a little bit more balanced and a little bit more compact. Again, a step forward against Newcastle. Let's make sure we take another stride forward and go into the cup final with a level of confidence. Cracking speech by Ten Hag on it. I mean, exactly what we heard last year, but what you want to hear. It'd be interesting to see what happens with Hoyland because he wasn't dropped; he was rested.
Well,
Hoyland needed to get off his feet. Hoyland needed to be taken out of the firing line. And let's hope,
yeah,
that a few minutes off the pitch comes on, and I think he really did show what he's capable. I think he's going to be a fantastic finisher. And when you look at those like astounding stats of how many shots the Premier League strikers have had, and he ranks dead last, and that's not on him. That's from the lack of service he's
yeah,
getting.
of
But then you
course.
look at the shot conversion rate, where he's right up at the top, shows you what he can be.
No, there's no question. The kid is got enormous talent. It's about how you get him into a game.
Yeah.
I think for Ten Hag, how much of a factor do you think it is that United are playing against Brighton, De Zerbi? One of the things that I think Ten
Yeah.
Hag can't have is I don't think for Ten Hag's reputation, he can afford a heavy defeat and being tactically outclassed. I think it's.
No,
Let me tell
no,
you
no.
something. When United play at Brighton at home, and I was told by an exceptional source that Brighton and De Zerbi were given Ten Hag's tactics and lineups 2 days before the game. I think this happened against Everton too, at home, where Everton came out and played a completely different system for the one United had been preparing for. But that was because there's someone inside United that's handing that information to people. I don't know how consistent that is, but um, I was told that by a really good source back in back then. Was that by September. So I think one of the things that Ten Hag can't have is one, can't have any leaks, and two, he cannot afford a poor performance where he's outclassed.
But yeah, with De Zerbi being one of the names that's been high on the list and everybody's been raving
Oh,
about,
I'm not
which I don't
in love
I
with, by the way.
don't really I don't get, to be honest. I think, and if you're gonna bash Graham Potter, I don't think you can celebrate De Zerbi because a lot of
100%.
that work was done by Graham Potter. So, but I 100% agree with you. It's a and maybe that motivation too will be there for him just to start silencing some critics a little bit himself. I expect a good performance. I expect something along the lines of what we've seen. I want to believe, and like I say, maybe it's the hope that kills you. And maybe we all get sucked in, but I think they'll put in performance, and I genuinely think they'll have a damn good go at City. And the City team, I don't think has been great. I don't think it's been great recently, but they put their chances away. But what you can't do with them, you can't concede early, like we did in the cup final last year. I think we just got to
Yeah,
show
I
that
was, I was,
we got to show we can compete. And what I want to see from Ten Hag Cup final wise, I want to see a little bit of thought in there that we're not just going to, because these players are fit again, they're just thrown into that same system that's failed all season long. Hopefully, there's a little bit of some technical and tactical tweaks in there. But I'm expecting a good one this weekend. I think, like I said, I think minutes have to be managed a little bit. I think again you're going to have half your mind on that or not. He'll tell you the only game that matters is this Brighton game. He's going for 3 points, but you've got to have some foresight into the cup final too.
yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he handles these next two games. I know I've said this before that I don't think his future should come down to how he manages these next few games. I think it has to be a deeper analysis than that. But I would say this, that if he was to win his last two games, he would be a very, very, very hard guy to sack. If he was to pull off a winning away to Brighton and beat City in the cup final, I would. One of the things you have to always take into consideration is sentiment, because I mean, I can really easily see a narrative where if United sack Ten Hag, Ineos bring in some guy and the start is a disaster, where everyone's like, "You really sacked the guy that won 2 trophies in 2 years,
Yeah.
finished fourth, finished third. You know, they had you in 3 finals. You know, they had one bad season because of injuries. I mean, it'd be so easy to frame that narrative." And I think for Ineos, not that you should manage based on sentiment. You know, you can't do that, but you know,
Well, I think you're right. Though. I think it almost provides them, in some sense, with a little bit of a safety net where during the transition here, you start fixing that point and go. You're almost giving yourself a little bit of an out to say, well, he wasn't our guy, so now we'll replace him. But
well,
replace him in the summer while you're replacing everything else. Then, from an Ineos standpoint, you've got nowhere to hide. But you better believe that
yes.
whoever you bring in hits the ground running and starts really tearing up trees, because it's maybe that's one question mark that they don't want to address right now. Going, we'll give him that time, and we'll go, because then we've got that in the we've got that ammo in the back pocket, don't we? We can pull that out. Hey, now we're going to replace him.
Well, the other thing is, mate, there's two parts to this. One, Ineos, you know, we're supposed to recruit this summer. They recruit the same players whether Ten Hag was there or not, right? So if you sack Ten Hag, it's not like you have to get rid of all of his players because these are players you would sign anyway because this is the way Ineos want to play, right?
Yeah.
And the manager is supposed to coach these players to play in this image, right? So it doesn't really impact how you run the football club that much whether Ten Hag's the manager. Not that, you know, that they could sack him in October, November. The other thing is, I would really like Brailsford, Ashworth, Wilcox, Ratcliffe to really get a feel for the football club and how big it is and how they are going to be judged on their decisions, because the criticism hasn't come yet. So if United start poorly under Ten Hag, then for the first time they're going to see their names in the paper. They're going to see their names in the media, and they need to feel that. And that partly needs to drive their next decision so that you don't underestimate the size of the football club. You don't underestimate the size of the task, and you don't bring in a guy that is just like Dan Ashworth that's never dealt, or Brailsford has never dealt with a football club on this level. But anyway, we'll see. All right, mate, we'll
Yeah.
go ahead and leave it there. Do you have anything else before I go?
No, other than say your stuff with James. James, hopefully you watch this superb stuff, mate. Thoroughly enjoy watching your stuff with James. It's been really, really insightful.
James class. Well, hopefully, mate, this is the first of many. I've been,
Absolutely.
I
Great to
swear
be
to God,
back.
I've been negotiating this for about 2 years. It finally graced me with his presence. I'm sure the paparazzi are going to tease you out there when you're heading out.
Yeah,
But,
lines around the corner.
what
Yeah.
kind of
I used to arrive in a minute. Sorry.
Oh my God. That's absolutely disgraceful level.
It's been a pleasure, Phil. Thank you.
See you later,
Appreciate it,
Martin.
guys.
Thanks to all
Thanks
of
a lot,
you.
guys.
Take care.
Take
See you.
care.
Bye.